What's happening, guys? This is Adi, Gate 7 International, coming back to you. Surprise, two more scouting reports. This one is going to be on our newest center back signing, Ruben Vezo. And we do have another one that's coming for Cabral, and that will be at a later time. But this one we're going to be focusing on the newest center back. So we thought we were done. Club decided they want to keep me busy. Before we get going with the scouting report, don't forget to like and subscribe. Costs you nothing. It means a lot to us and it helps us find more red and white fans. So please hit that button and help us continue to find and connect the red and white community. You can also support us on Patreon. We just recently dropped a great interview with the agent of Doran Leidner, and it is a very exciting interview. If you support us on Patreon, you can get access to new episodes. You can join our WhatsApp group, or you can get yourself a free piece of merch that's unique just to our Patreon subscribers. Support us there and check out the extra content that you can get. You also get early access to the scouting reports if you are an enhanced content tier member or above. Without further ado, guys, let's get started. Let's start talking about the latest addition to the red and white, Ruben Vezo. And this was a very last minute signing, very interesting signing that we are going to talk about. Ruben Vezo is 29 years of age. He's a right footed center back, standing at 182 centimeters, which is 6 foot for the US based guys, 176 pounds, and as that translates, 80 kilograms. So he's not the tallest, but he's got a pretty stocky, solid build. Like I said earlier, we got a big surprise. We thought we were done with transfers. We were told we were done with transfers, but that's not the case. These last two guys are going to be our last two signings, and by them I mean Vezo and Cabral. In the scouting report, we're going to be going over a lot of different things with respect to this. The player has come in for free from Levante, but Levante will retain a small resale percentage should we move the player on. As I already mentioned to you when I read his height, he's not the largest center back around, but he is strong and he actually has a pretty decent touch on the ball. He's not incredibly agile, nor is he incredibly fast, but he is capable of moving the ball quickly and evading challenges on the press while he uses his size to kind of give himself a little bit of an advantage against his opponent, especially if they're a smaller attacker. So the profile really isn't anything crazy, and it's not anything different that we haven't seen before, but just something to be aware of as we start discussing things. First thing, of course, and if this is your first scouting report that you're tuning into, we go over percentiles. We measure the player up against other center backs, in this case, in the Segunda division where he was playing before coming to Olympiacos, and we evaluate him against all of them and see where he stacks up with various data points and see how he's performing. We're going to start with the goal creation, which is in that bottom section. And what we see is more or less his goal creation is his goal threat is non-existent. And by goal threat, we mean his direct opportunities that he gets on goal. I only saw him in the tape that all the tape I could go back to score one goal, and that was off of a corner. It was a good header, but that was literally the only instance I saw him score a goal. Aside from that, he did have some shot opportunities from corner kicks and set pieces, but really there wasn't much. There wasn't much there, and most of his shot opportunities were off of rebounds, very far from distance outside the penalty area, and never on frame. So years of footage and very little goal threat tells me he's not going to have any goal threat for us. Now, as far as assist creation goes, that's a little bit of a different story. This is much more a value proposition for Ruben than goal threat is. Compared to other center backs, he had the highest volume of assists, period, per 90 minutes in the Segunda Division. And he almost led the Segunda Division in key passes per 90 minutes. You can see that in the chart as well. His assists came in one of two contexts. First, when he's in an advanced position, usually on the left side of the penalty, his left side of the penalty area, and he plays a cross into the goal mouth, and one of his players hits it. One of his teammates hits it, and it goes in. The second context was deeper long balls. So he would be not quite just the edge of the final third, just entering the final third and playing a very deep ball that would cut the defensive line. And quite frankly, those balls were just very nice to watch. I mean, they were incredible accuracy, incredible vision to really pick that stuff out. And while these were the context for his actual end product, we actually saw a large number of key passes. That would come also when he was in advanced areas at the top of the penalty area, though, not necessarily further deep, closer to the end line. And same thing, he would be crossing the ball into his defenders. I saw a lot of danger there, even though there wasn't really any assist from that type of context. So very interesting to see. But while we're talking about this, there's a huge kicker here, or just something that we need to point out, despite the fact that I'm talking about this and it's such a positive light. And we need to talk about the context of what we could see at Olympiacos, because while I'm talking about how interesting it was to see him get into these advanced positions, this means that he gets very far forward in attack. That's what I mean when I say advanced position. But from what we've seen so far from Carvajal, I find it very, very unlikely that he is going to be afforded any opportunities, or many, I should say, to get forward like he does. I just don't. Well, look at what we see with Retos and Ndoye, and it just doesn't happen. Doy had one of his first instances in open play where he was able to get forward and he scored a goal, but he's not given those opportunities very much. They're instructed to stay deep, stay near the halfway point, especially when we're in offense, just to prevent against the counter. So while Ruben, as I mentioned, does have value when it comes to shot creation, or assist creation, I should say, when he's sitting deeper and he's playing the long balls through the defensive line, the volume in those alone isn't adequate enough of a value proposition without him being allowed to go forward. So, just something for you guys to be a little bit more aware of. Now, as we cross into the buildup and the possession statistics, this is in the top section, that top third of the chart that we have here. In buildup for Levante, Vezo was usually one of the first touches following either a ball recovery or even out of the back. He's keeping his line, presenting as an option either to a winger, a wide midfielder, or even to one of his deeper center mids, just to give them an option. So for a restart, or so that he can help move the ball around. Now, depending on how advanced an attack is getting, if it's actually getting into the final third, he will be the member of the center back pair that will go forward to assist with progressing the ball into the final third or into the penalty area. In his prime, not within the last like year or so, he was actually quite good at exploiting some of these spaces to get forward and then make moves with the ball. But the caveat is this had a tendency to leave very large holes that had to be filled in the back, and they weren't always carefully covered, whether it was by his fullback or by his center mids, um, or even his wide midfielders. So while he did have an above average number of carries compared to other center backs in Segunda Division, he was top tier when lying deeper and advancing the ball forward via progressive passes that make meaningful movement forward into the final third. Now, as I mentioned before, his goal threat, that is, he has impressive vision when he's hitting this ball downfield and he's splitting two defenders or two players to catch one of his teammates in stride. So, something that also will have great impact in either spurring a counter or a fast break in buildup. His pass accuracy last season, you can see there, it's really not impressive. At 84% for a center back, that's very low. And compared to center backs in Segunda Division, it was quite low. I mean, he's like hovering around that 35th percentile, which is really not good. Now, w- we told you before that he makes a lot of risks going forward, making some of those cutting passes. But even when we remove those types of plays and we just look at some of like the generic passes that he makes, the less risky ones, we still kind of see that he's really not better than average when it comes to pass accuracy. And part of that is the fact that he makes some really weird mistakes. Um, the only way I could describe some of them were just brain farts, instances where I really had no idea what he was thinking. and I couldn't blame what he was doing on a misstep or a stumble. It just I really have no idea what was going through his head. And what kind of what makes matters worse is I really also didn't see a lot of effort to try and get the ball back after he lost it. And perhaps this was the reason why we saw so much hate and fan ire for him when he left Levante and officially was announced that he was being or that he was joining Olympiacos, because they talked about him not having passion, not caring, and this is an instance where it just looks like he didn't care. So just something to bear in mind. You obviously hope that he doesn't carry that with him here, but just something to note. And you look at this, and it is a shame because he can adequately distribute the ball. He's actually pretty good at it. And in this respect, it's comparable to Retsos. I don't believe he's as skilled as at carrying the ball as Retsos is, or even kind of distributing the ball overall like Retsos. Retsos also even has a penchant for a long ball that can cut through the defense. We've seen him catch Masuras a couple of times, but the volume is not near what Vezo does on a game by game basis. The last thing we're going to build up when we're looking at kind of the general profile here is the defensive attributes. They're obviously very important for us to look when we talk about defenders, but in the case of Vezo, it's even more important. It's more important because his value proposition so far clearly lies in his distribution ability, especially from deep to cut defensive lines. But when we look at his defending, I have to admit there leaves a bit to be desired. When he's closing players down, I see him making a lot of the same mistakes as Doy. He's quick to lunge, can get turned on quite easily, and a forward with decent agilities, E can just cut by him and just take him for a little bit of a ride, especially if they're just moving laterally across the 18-yard line, or I should say the penalty box. Where he does excel, though, is when he's able to get a forward or somebody to kind of turn their back on him. Then there really isn't much escape. I mean, he's on you, he's aggressive, he's pulling on you. So that's a context I saw where he had a lot of success, almost always had success. But otherwise, I saw a lot of lunges, which I wasn't a big fan of. A below average level of overall dual wins. But I should point out though, the volume was low. He doesn't engage in a lot of defensive duels, and he does actually have a 65% defensive duel win rate, which overall as a percentage is kind of like just near slash above average for other center backs in the Segunda division. But you couple that when you couple that percentage win rate with his low volume of defensive duels overall, it does give you a pretty below average figure, which you would like to see your center back maybe getting into a little bit more than that. But maybe that also speaks to kind of like what he's good at in defense, because where I did see him excel on the defensive side of things was kind of reading plays, similar in a way we've described Santiago Heze, where he's not like just running at the person with the ball. He's actually watching the runners, watching who the options are, and really keeping an eye on that so that he can anticipate and get to there and even try to break plays down. I mean, I saw a couple of plays where a player was trying to be cute with him, back heel or trying to do something no look, but he knew where the players were that were running, and he just would immediately go to where that player was going and head the ball off. So very interesting, and in that respect, closing down players one on one like that may not be a strong suit, but he actually has a pretty high defensive IQ, and his ability to read those plays kind of counteracts his ability to maybe fail to contain players that are one on one. Now, regarding his aerial ability, he's not effective really at all in the air. 58% aerial duel success, that ranks him outside the top 30 players in overall aerial duel wins in the Segunda division. And really, it's like just near the 50th percentile with center backs in Segunda. So, not very impressive. And considering that we need help in the set piece department, we need people that can win these balls in the air, because especially guys like Retos and Doi aren't exactly amazing. They don't have really great attributes like that. it is concerning to me that this guy doesn't really offer that because now we brought somebody in, but he's not actually offering us what we need. This is around the time once we finish up with the profile, we do our comparison, and I picked Doi once again. He's getting a lot of love here when we're comparing to the incoming CBs, and the reason I keep using Ndoye is because he's the one that's most likely going to be impacted by this. Retzos is probably still going to be a starter next to Carmo, and maybe Vezo will push Doi down the pecking order, but we use Doi because he's the one that's more expendable. So as long as these guys are better than Doi, then it shows value, at least some relative value for the player. But when we look at the comparison here, we see that despite Vezo's offensive attributes being his value proposition, they're outshined by Andres Doy in many respects. I mean, Doy is can be a center of possession as well. He sees more volume of touches on a per 90-minute basis. He's a more competent dribbler. And he also has higher volumes of distribution into the final third, at least for Olympiacos. And normally we would look at the difference, especially if a lot these other players that come from top leagues and say, okay, well, he's less because he's in a more competitive league, but he'll make up for this. This is second division Spain. I don't know what your excuse there is going to be. So Ndoye, as you can see here, also has a better defensive dual win rate. He's better at closing players down. He's better in the air. So I mean, he's really got a lot going for him and against Vezo. So it's just a very weird situation. But where Vezo does have Doi is the deep lying playmaking and the vision to catch these players in stride. To make matters worse, he even still has some of that same overcommitment that as Doi has, and maybe that contributes to the brain farts. Maybe he just has these brain farts. I mean, I really just can't explain to you guys. And for reference here, if you remember, if you watch the scouting report with Carmo, the one of the first center backs that we brought in, left-footed center back before Nelson Abbey, I saw him as a clear upgrade to Doi, Carmo. And even when we did the scouting report for the patrons that saw it, I thought Gaston Hernandez, while maybe he wasn't a clear upgrade over Doi, I thought he was a better partner to Retsos. I'm not convinced Vezo is a clear upgrade to Doi, and I really can't tell if he's going to be a good replacement to Carmo or Retsos if that's what they use him for. There's just a lot of overlap with their abilities. And the funny thing is, Vezo, I think, actually would be a better complement to Andreas Doi if this is a big if Vezo was playing as like the last man back. I think this would be a decent compliment. But again, the fact that Vezo's in second division and his stats really are nothing special, it's kind of a red flag to me. I would expect if we're scouting a guy in second division, we would be a little bit more impressed by his data. But um, at the same time, at the very least, you would want to see them in a way outdoing one of your other players. But we we don't see that here. I don't know. I couldn't tell you guys if this was properly scouted or not. This is just what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing here, and my opinion is based off of the information that's in front of me. So moving on to the last part of the deep dive, we go into the verdict. What is my verdict? After reviewing all the information we have, looking at this all, I have to tell you guys, I'm disappointed. I I'm not a huge fan of this transfer, I'll be honest. I mean, if we're talking quality, there is no quality. I don't see much quality here in a generic sense. Now, if we're talking about value for dollar, I think there's some value, and I think he will be a decent bench option for us. The only problem I see, regardless of the value proposition, is that this player solves a problem we do not have. Vezo's a solid ball distributor, solid playmaker in the final third, but Carvajal will not let him get into those advanced positions unless he sees an angel in his dream and decides to open things up a little bit. It makes the guy more of a deeper center back playmaker, which Retsos is already doing quite confidently. So if that's the case, why do we even bring this guy in? Look, overall, like I said, I'm not really super impressed with this signing. He's free. I don't think this is a big improvement over what we have. For that reason, even though I'm not going to give him a thumbs up, I'm not really going to give him a thumbs down either because I don't think it's tragic. It's just kind of one of these. It's like it doesn't seem like a good signing. It's not really a bad signing. It's just meh. We'll call this meh. For that reason, it is what it is. I hope he proves me wrong, but I just can't see this guy starting over Retsos. And there's no way he's on our UEFA list. No way. In the end, transfer window, finally, it's over. It ended. We managed to get a final couple of signings. I told you guys the last signing with Cabral that'll be recorded. Probably get to that tomorrow, and we'll be finished. And on the bright side, it's February. We can get back to watching football, not worrying about transfers. So there's that. I get to take a rest. So I hope you guys enjoyed the deep dive. I hope that you guys found the information valuable. Got the last scouting report coming to you, and then let's just watch some football, boys and girls, of course. A lot of girls following the show these days. I'm Adi. This is Gate 7 International by the fans for the fans. See you next time.